the parts of the brain performed by the brain.
Yes. Neocortex, frontal lobe,
Brainstem,
hippocampus, neural node, right hemisphere, pons and cortex, visual,
brainstem,
Sylvian Fisher, pineal, left hemisphere, cerebellum left, cerebellum right, synapse, hypothalamus, striatum, dendrite. Axon fibers, matter gray,
brainstem,
central tegmental pathway, temporal lobe, white core matter, forebrain skull,
brainstem,
central fissure, cord spinal, parietal, diameter, meningeal vein, medulla oblongata, and lobe limbic, microelectrodes, the brain. That ought to keep the little squirts happy. Yeah.
So now that we're all a little bit more awake,
You're officially my favorite panelist.
thank you. So now that we're all a little bit more awake, because this is a little bit more difficult because this is an academic course, because I am, of course, Rebecca from Ningyo BINGO, where you keep on collecting dolls, but you never seem to win the game. I am one of a two-part duo, me and Lindsay, who create a podcast that, as well as going through some current events and tutorials, also goes through history and analysis of our doll hobby, sometimes even going into science. Today we're going to go into sciences. It's kind of cool. So this is going to be really fun, and this is important to me because people in the media like to portray people who collect dolls as people that are sick or obsessed. And there is many, many, many good and healthy things about collecting dolls, particularly for your brain. So we're going to go over it. You can ask questions at any time. I am by no means a brain expert. I just find this stuff fascinating, and I was tired of everybody just showing the people in media that have like a house full of Barbies in so much that there was no room for them to sleep and they sleep on the floor in a corner. That is not the doll hobby as a whole, and they will never show it. So I will, gosh darn it. So let's jump right into it. This is not a doll. Don't worry, I know that. We'll get there. This is not a doll. This, in fact, is a factory where machines make cars. Now, these machines, of course, move, have joints, and do jobs like humans do, but you probably would not go up to one and pat it and say, "Good job," at the end of the day. There's nothing really there that connects you to the machine. But once you give a face to it, all of a sudden it becomes personable, even if it is still a robot. And if anybody gets this reference, you are a little older and way too into Disney, and you get so many points from me. But let's go one further. So, once you get into robots that look relatively like a human and move, something weird happens. There isn't an immediate like. In fact, her neck is moving wrong. Her eyebrows are not moving. She's not blinking regularly. Her skin is not reflecting the light right. Her jaw is not moving. Her cheeks don't have muscles in them, so when she says a word or goes for an E, they don't pull up. You start to notice everything wrong about this robot. And of course, this is called something that's deep inside you, which is because when something is moving and it's not an alive human, your brain says, zombie. Because if it's not alive but it looks like a human and it's moving, it shouldn't do that. And it's very interesting because your brain actually has two sections where it categorizes something that it's an animate object, and when they look in MRIs and stuff, when you're thinking about animate objects and living things, it'll glow there. When you're thinking about inanimate objects, it'll glow there.
I call it fourth day of con.
Yeah. And if it's trying to do that, and it can't figure out which one it is, it gets confusing and uncomfortable because it is the uncanny valley. Welcome to your first academic point of the day. So you can see that we went over, of course, this dotted line because honestly it's easier to describe because it goes through much more extremes. You can see our industrial robot, our humanoid robot, and of course the zombie. Now, you notice that it's not quite as exaggerated when it's a usually non-moving object, but you get the idea. When people first get into the hobby, their knee-jerk reaction is, there is something wrong with this object. It's okay, it's a human reaction, and it's good for us, both of us, to understand as we're showing friends and perhaps strangers that wander into the doll market, and understand that it's a perfectly human reaction, and they're doing what their body is telling them to do.
The next reaction is wear clothes.
Yeah. So once again, this is because you're trying to categorize, your brain's trying to categorize things that are living from things that are dead. And it gets confused, it doesn't like that, and anything that's moving when it shouldn't be moving gives your brain a no reaction. But something happens over time. So eventually you look at them and dolls have exaggerated features and things like that, and you start to be a little bit more okay with this. This happens in other aspects of life and other professions. For example, if you're a driver of a hearse or you work in a mortuary, the knee-jerk reaction of looking at a corpse begins to fade away as you begin to acclimate. If you are in a toilet stall at the convention and the person next to you is doing something unmentionable and should never happen on God's earth, eventually as you're sitting in that stall, your nose begins to smell it less and less because it's not new information, and your brain starts to filter it out because your brain is an efficient machine. And you begin to acclimate. Acclimating happens a lot in your brain, so it makes us very versatile animals. What this happens in the BJD hobby as you get further along is you get to have different aesthetics. So beginner aesthetics are ones that are fairly human, less exaggerated, normalized proportions, perhaps even sometimes the Dolphy dreams. I will say that people have already become normalized to those because of anime, and they're used to seeing those faces. So when they see it on the doll, it doesn't give them that knee-jerk reaction anymore, because even though it's in a different medium, they've gotten used to it. Now, as you go along, you get into advanced aesthetics, because your brain has seen all these things so long, so it no longer goes, oh God, and you start to look at the things differently, which is really cool, which means you can start getting more into the art and go more into the dolls that push the visual boundaries. This is an old one, but you can tell that those eyes are in no way, shape, or form even close to a normal anime eye shape. The mouth is incredibly small. The nose is almost so small on here that for the audio podcast, it's about 2 to 3 foot by 1 foot picture, and you can barely see that there is a nose present. And we have the doll Chateau Elizabeth, who is, of course, spliced between a person and an arachnid. And frankly, most people would call that creepy, but as we get more into the hobby, we start to say, that's neat, that's unique, that's interesting, I want to see that, I want to see more things like that. So, as we get into the hobby and you now kind of have dolls or getting into the dolls, you start to gain enjoyment from them. Imagine that, we play with dolls, we have dolls because they make us happy. I'm going to figure out where I am in my notes. So we have dopamine, serotonin, gamma-aminobutyric acid, hereby known as GABA because that is too hard to say, and a little bit of adrenaline. These are just a few basic ones. The first three are what's called a neurotransmitter. So let's go over each one, and they'll start to make more sense, because each one gives you a little bit of a different feeling. Dopamine is the feeling when you go into the vendor's room and you see what lies before you, and this Ecco apparently had the largest vendor marketplace ever for the main convention. It was huge. Dopamine is the feeling when you walk right out into that room and you see everything in front of you and you start going, all the possibilities. And you want to get out there and you want to shop and you want to see things, you want to see what there is, because it's all new, it's all exciting. And it's a good, exciting, happy feeling. It's a feeling of anticipation. Which is why this guy and this right here are related. Okay, it doesn't look like they're related, but I'll get there. This was a study. Dopamine isn't the good feeling. It's the anticipation of the good feeling. They used the MRI machine to monitor a brain as they were given Kool-Aid in a little dropper. What happened was, if the Kool-Aid was given at even intervals, the part of the brain that activates with dopamine was not lighting up because it was expected. So it wasn't exciting or interesting or something to look forward to. However, when those drops of Kool-Aid were randomly interspersed with drops of water, the dopamine centers lit up. So what this means for you as a doll hobbyist is that a lot of times when you're shopping or a new order comes out or a new thing is released, you get a hit of dopamine and it makes you happy. We'll get over that, especially the shopping bit, in a little bit. Dopamine is also the feeling when you see something cute. I shamelessly have shown my cats in both my panels. So cute things, which a lot of our hobby is kawaii and kawaii soul, gives you that happy, warm feeling, the feeling of being overwhelmed by the cute in a good way, the feeling of being comforted by something there that is cute. Look, he gave the other one a turn. It's really cute. I love these. This was like I said, it's about 3 years ago. They're adorbs. I don't care, I'm sitting here watching it a few more seconds. Yeah, so that is also dopamine. Now, serotonin. Serotonin is the feeling when you start with this and you finish with that. Serotonin is the feeling of something completed, a goal being reached, a chemical payoff for getting what you wanted or working towards a goal and getting what you wanted. It's a good thing. Gamma-aminobutyric acid, there you go, I did it again. We'll see how many more I got. It's the feeling we had in the doll marketplace, in the round tables. We had adult coloring books. Gamma-aminobutyric acid, it gives you the feeling of being warm and comforted and at ease and relaxed. It's a good, relaxed feeling. So the feeling that you would get from coloring in all these little minute things and just focusing on it and meditating on it and being focused on just one task and losing the world around you for a little while, that is a good feeling. And we get that from the doll hobby. Adrenaline is like a haunted house. You get everybody's heard of fight or flight. It gives you the option to your pupils dilate, your heart starts racing, more blood starts going to all your muscles and everything, so you can fight or run away from your problem. How exactly this helps you in the doll hobby is a little iffy. I'm not sure having your eyes dilated will help you with an eBay auction, but sometimes you get really excited. So let's bring it back to the dolls. First thing that happens when you're looking for the new doll is the look, the search. You start to look. You start a folder on your computer. You fill it with pictures of all the little pieces that you want. The eyes, the head, the other head, the other head. Oh my God, which head am I going to use? And you start to put all your ideas down. And you're anticipating getting that doll, which means you are getting dopamine. And it's very good and exciting, and it feels nice. Next, of course, comes the purchase, which you get another nice round of dopamine, possibly actually some serotonin because maybe it was your end goal to purchase it, but we'll get more of that later. So you're anticipating now the arrival of it, and you're excited, and you might have beat out somebody at an auction, or maybe even won it in a raffle or something like that, as we have done here at this con. And that comes there. So once again, more neurotransmitters happening. And finally, then you get the wait. So during the wait, you sit there and you anticipate its arrival, and you start posting in every single waiting room you can find, and you start commiserating with your friends, but you're still thinking what to wear, what am I going to get for it, perhaps do more shopping so you have exactly what your doll needs when it gets there. And it can feel a little antsy, but it's nice and it's exciting. Finally, the arrival, in which you get a nice dump of serotonin, which is the excitement, anticipation, and arrival, and of course the dopamine, because it's the end of your goal. This is the subsequent end of chemical rewards from purchasing the doll, which means the usual next step is the search, because you go right back to the beginning again. This is an okay thing, because it's the reward cycle that leads to wonderful doll families. Of course, my motto is always keep collecting dolls but keep a budget. So there's some things you can do to prevent your collection from outgrowing your needs, because let's be honest, that's called the purchase cycle. And it can feed on itself because it feels good. It does, it's nice. And people like doing things that feels good, like eating good food, going to movies, and everything like that. Ooh, she has Chips Ahoy. I'm going to need to see you after the panel, I think.
I only got us in Better Butter left.
Oh, nuts.
I got another one of those in the car. But
So, ordered collections in themselves are satisfying. Humans like categories. Humans like ordering things. So we like taking that and changing it into that. That feels a whole lot better, doesn't it? Humans really like creating ordered collections. And by having an ordered collection, perhaps by having a pair of dolls that you feel like belong with each other, a couple, boy, girl, 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 androgynous, non-identifying, whatever, by having a couple or a set or something like that, it feels right, it feels complete, and it feels satisfying to have them together. Some people just collect a whole bunch of one sculpt and various iterations. This one has the four sisters, Megu, Nana, Kira, Sarah, sculpt, and in various iterations, including sleeping eyes, totally sleeping eyes, the USD one in a tan skin, which looks fabulous. And having this collection and having it feel complete and ordered feels good and satisfying and comforting. It's another way we gain enjoyment from the hobby, and it helps us. If we go have a hard day at work and we come home and look at the collection and it's there and the dolls are, well, in Megu's example, maybe frowning ever so slightly and staring off in the distance. She has a very unique expression that's indicative of the beginning of the hobby. But sometimes they smile at you, sometimes they're grumpy for no reason, and it feels nice to just look at them. But now you have your doll and you're in Dollhouse. There's other things you do with your dolls, mainly interacting with the dolls and interacting with the doll community. Hi. So this is because of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Really big academic point, kind of number 3. So in my notes. In 1943, he published a paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. This was Abraham Maslow. He kind of started to go over this, and then Hierarchy of Needs was published in 1954 in a book called Motivation and Personality. This is basically the whole reason why you collect dolls, according to this, because there's this part on the top that's called self-actualization, which includes, but tell me if you heard this before, creativity, problem solving, things that really go along with our doll hobby. Now, we also have this part on the bottom called love and belonging. We'll get to that in a little bit. Also, with the personal, it's a little below self-actualization, but there's esteem, self-esteem, a confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. So all those things make you feel good. So, for example, I think this was, I lied in my last panel. This was an odd one where I actually had drawn this picture first. I had drawn the picture first, and then I finally got my doll to exactly how I wanted it. That feels so good. That is creativity, realization of a goal, self-esteem. It makes you feel good. It helps you get to that lovely little pinnacle on the triangle. Now, interacting with the dolls further, you have dressing and styling the doll. Now, this is where we get into a little bit of GABA. I'm done with that word. I'm GABA. This is where we get into GABA. You're sitting there, you're focusing on the task of dressing the doll. And of course, once you get it done and it looks good, you feel good about yourself, creativity, self-actualization, etc. You create for the doll. Obviously, creativity. You design it, sew it, put it together. You feel good about it. And that, once again, gets you higher onto that peak into it. Taking photos of the doll can be a little bit of both just creativity and everything, and can also be the meditative feeling. Even sewing, I know a lot of people here sit there and hand sew things, really right at the convention, and get that nice meditative calming feeling, as well as taking photos of the doll, planning it out, putting it all together, makes it really good. It's a good feeling because you're focusing on one thing. The rest of the world goes away for a little while. The GABA happens, and then at the end you feel good because you created the thing you wanted to create, your photo. And of course you can do photo stories, which are really, really good because then you have this wonderful story. And of course the next natural progression after you create a story is to want to show it to your community. So here we are again at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, someone went a little further in this, who was Nigel Fenwick. He published a very short article called The Secret of Successful Social Communities for Social Needs in the March 2010 in Forrester, which is an online group which is really meant more for marketing and things like that. But it's very interesting because it was very specific to think about social marketing and things like that, which is really kind of what we do whenever we see something, because we're everywhere in the world, our doll hobby. So we take pictures and everything, and then we naturally share them. So he took this idea of having a personal hierarchy of needs, and then he changed it into a hierarchy of social community needs. Now, here's what we get when we start to share things. We ask and support. We are helping others, thanking contributors. We see posts and we say that they look good, or we ask about how to do something because we're confused on how to do it. And then all the way on the top, we have a creative outlet, creating art and showing it, expressing individuality. How many different types of L's are there, but yours might be unique to you and you feel it's unique and wonderful. Solving challenges together. Oh my gosh, my doll has greened. Make a post. Everybody starts giving feedback, and when the person fixes the doll, it doesn't feel like the one person succeeded. It feels like everybody succeeded in getting where you needed to go. And of course, a little further down, obviously a hierarchy of social community needs as very at this basic level, communicating and building social connections and people that you like and want to interact with. So basically, most of the time when you're doing that, you're going to be here, and or many Facebook groups nowadays, but this used to be the main thing, which is, of course, Den of Angels, the largest at the moment English language forum for Asian ball-jointed dolls. So, introductions. That's building your community and getting social feedback. Newbie Land, same thing. BJD meetups, figuring out how to get to people in live meet space. We'll get there. Conventions. Hi. Ordering and shipping questions. So, problem solving and everything. There we go. People working as a group to work together on problem solving. Waiting rooms, commiserating as your dopamine floods your mind and trying to figure out how you're going to deal with all this anticipation and feeling of that doll coming to you. Box opening and arrival gallery, everybody looking there and getting together and feeling good, not just the one person, but multiple people feeling good that the doll arrived. Games, playing together, galleries, photo stories, you get the idea. So offline community interaction. There's a lot of things that could be said for just getting together in an actual space and interacting. It is good for you, would you believe? There's many more studies, not specifically about dolls and conventions, but about socializing in person and why it is good for you. So, Angela K. Troyer, PhD of psychology, wrote a very, 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 very short article, almost just a list, because that's the way articles are going these days, I suppose, of the health benefits of socialization. She broke it down into these 4 short reasons. Number 1, you get to live longer. There's studies that are very long, lengthy studies that prove that the people that went out and socialized more often actually had statistically longer lives, which is really cool. Get to stay with that doll collection much, much longer. You have a stronger immune system. Once again, long-term studies have proven that you are generally healthier when you actually go out and socialize. At the moment, my sore throat that I have gained from this con is making me doubt this theory, but you know, that is anecdotal evidence. And you generally feel happier. Once again, long-term studies. This one's a little interesting because anytime when you're talking about a feeling, unless you're putting yourself in an MRI and they're testing chemicals in your brain, it is a subjective study. So they had people that surveyed that said they actually felt good more often and had less signs of depression.
And
Yeah.
to me, it's very, very obvious.
Yes. Now, granted, socialization, different people need to do it at different levels, and one person needs to feel great at being nice and socialized, i.e. being in that big crowded hall right out there and seeing all the people, might be an overstimulation for somebody, and you just need a smaller amount of stimulation, like the small round tables in the other room. You're still socializing. You just don't want to overstimulate yourself so you don't feel too bad. So the fourth one, is a less of a chance of dementia late in life and performing better on memory and cognitive tasks. Which is, tasks is a really hard word to say with a sore throat, my goodness. Okay, for example, many of us have seen this site, or perhaps the earlier version of the site, which lists every single full choice system head by books. Many of us from the early hobby could recognize most of these sculpts, and they don't even have a name. They have a letter designation and a number. And we could probably name the first 24 by memory. This is something that keeps later into life as we continue with this hobby and socialization and everything. There's less of a chance of dementia. Dementia is crazy serious. It will wreck lives. So it's amazing that just coming here, being here at a convention, talking about your dolls, bringing your dolls out, painting with a person, talking with a person, figuring out which skirt your doll is going to wear, can later in life reduce your chances of dementia. That's crazy. It's amazing. So, getting back into the brain a little again, our brains are built for socializing. It's kind of crazy, but they are. In-Fei Chan in June 2009, Smithsonian wrote The Brain Cell for Socializing. John Allman was working on this, and there are, my gosh, why is this not here? There are these cells called, there we go, von Economos neurons. I'm sorry if I pronounced that very weirdly. So, if you're a social sort of animal, you tend to have a larger brain. In fact, once again, anthropologist Robin Dunbar is quoted as saying, "The largest predictor for species brain size, specifically the neocortex, the outermost layer, is the size of its social group." So basically, larger brain compared to body size usually means larger social group, which is crazy. So one thing that brains have that are doing this are these long neurons. It's very hard to tell exactly what each neuron does in a brain, but it's surmised that these longer neurons are specifically in a brain because it helps for the larger brains to communicate all the information that happens in complex social situations. So the brain is larger, so they need longer single cell neurons so they can transmit the information faster, which is kind of cool. Once again, our brains are built for socializing. So these brain cells have been found in various social animals, including dolphins and primates. So, congratulations. You just learned a whole lot on a Sunday effing morning at a convention when you have probably gotten less than 8 hours of sleep in the last 4 days. Give yourselves a hand. That's awesome. You did a great job. So you learned about the uncanny valley and how things feel uncomfortable when you are looking at something that looks like it should be alive, but it's moving or not moving. You've learned about brain neurotransmitters, dopamine, and all the rest, and how those make you actually feel. And you now know what your body is doing and what your brain does when you're shopping and looking at dolls. You have learned about the purchase cycle and how that can endlessly loop, but you've also learned about collections and categories which can help you curate your collection in a way that makes it feel comfortable and wonderful and calming. You've learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which tells you why you're here in the first place and why the doll hobby makes you feel good and why it's the next natural step after food, shelter, and clothing and sleep. You've learned about communities and satisfaction and why being in a community makes you feel good and comforted and safe and how this relates to the doll hobby. And finally, you've learned about socialization and brain health and how being here today is good for you no matter what your mom says and no matter what your wallet says.
So it's good for you, not your bank account.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for being my wonderful audience of 3, 4, 5 in the back, for staying here and watching me talk and shift back and forth nervously through this presentation. If you want to listen to more things about this, tutorials, analysis, history lessons on the dolls, you can go ahead and go right to NingyoBINGO.com, and that's where we have our wonderful website, which will lead you to our our Facebook, iTunes, the RSS feed, which will work in any of your favorite podcast viewers, listeners, whatever. And it will also lead you to Neo Angel Den, which is my recent project which has kicked my butt other than these panels, which was the revitalizing and updating of the original Angel Den, which went over, Creating Dreams specifically, which went over the Volks full custom service. Thank you. How did I do on time? What time is this supposed to end?
I don't know, because the guide said you like had 15 minutes. The
Oh,
guide out, it has you from 10 a.m. to 10:15.
well, whatever. Took longer than
I
that.
don't think starts till 11.
Okay, well, I'm 20 minutes short.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions, or is there anything you'd like to see a podcast on in the future?
You missed one. What happens when you have too many dolls and now you have to sell them, but still say goodbye to one?
Yes, and the immediate
It's
need.
part of the circle.
I think, yeah, it's probably is because in relation to my previous panel, which was how to get more out of your current doll collection, if that doll sits and you do not invest time or emotion into it, and you do not make it part of your hobby, and you do not actively use your doll, and it just sits there, it becomes less interesting to you. And of course, the next step is you're going to see a new doll. And when you see that new doll, it's going to activate that dopamine that's not being activated for you on this other doll. Then that other doll goes, bye-bye. And the new one goes, hello. And that's what happens. So it's all part of the chemical makeup. And you can prevent that by investing more time in the doll, even just changing the doll's outfits like once a month or something, which I mentioned in the other panel. It helps. Or totally reinventing the doll, wiping the face up, new wig, everything else, which is, it's investing time and maybe a little bit of money into the doll, but it still helps you reinvigorate your interest. And if it's something new and interesting again, then you're activating your dopamine again. Any other questions?